All right. Hello, everyone. Let me see if I can see myself over on YouTube because StreamYard broadcasts to YouTube. All right. I can see myself. I don't see the three antenna symbols. So I think I'm getting a nice signal here. As you can see, I'm not at my home in the DMV. I'm actually in upstate New York visiting my father. And those of you who are Facebook friends, you know that yesterday was his birthday. And I posted a picture on Facebook, and that was pretty popular. So I need to post more pictures of me and my father because that got a lot of love. It's getting more love than any of my content. So, and it's cold here. It's about 29 degrees. 27 degrees outside, so we just went out to get some food. So it's it's cold. It's March, but in the Northeast in upstate New York, it's still pretty cold here. Anyway, this is going to be a short stream. It might be a bit of a thought piece and a bit of a ramble. Some ideas were floating around in my mind, and they've coalesced into this stream here. And as you might expect, it involves some writing. So I'm going to play the intro, and then on the other side, I'm going to say what it is I need to say, and then I'm going to hop off because I'm visiting my pops, and I should go upstairs and watch some TV and break bread with him for a while. So I'm going to play the intro, and then I'm going to start. And I want to thank the person who's watching. Please hit the like. I noticed that this stream got 2 likes before I went live. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. I wasn't sure if I was going to go live tonight because I've been teleworking all day, and the day job just pulls so much out of you. But I'm a YouTuber. This is business, and content is content. So I'm going to play the intro, and then I'll see you on the other side. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, my original channel. First of all, Please like the stream, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. It is March 3rd of 2022. As I said, in upstate New York, in the Albany area, it is cold. It's about 27 degrees outside. Let me just adjust this really quickly. All right. So before I jump in, as you know, I'm a writer, so I'm going to do some advertising. I hope you guys don't mind. Please hit the like button. I think this might be one of those streams where I'm, for the most part, talking to myself. I'm not a big YouTuber, so there are streams that get a huge turnout, and then there are streams that get a small turnout, and that depends upon who's going live at the same time, and it also depends upon whether or not people are interested in what you're talking about. But I know that LJ from Savings Minus Debt said that for the first year, he was talking to himself. And I know for a smaller YouTubers, sometimes there are streams like that. Anyway, I don't want to waste time. The super chat is live. If you're watching this and you're inspired to donate something, Mr. Heat, he's here. What's going on, Mr. Heat? Also, if you want to donate something by Cash App or PayPal, let me slow down. That is there as well. I'm kind of talking like a politician because I'm using my hand like this. Anyway, that's out of the way. If you haven't, I want to, Black Wealth and Power. Black Wealth and Power, are you the one who was asking for Mr. Uru, Mr. Black Uru? I sent an email. I guess he doesn't want to come hang out and talk about his accounting career. So the invitation is out there. Black Uru, if you're watching this. If you don't want to, I understand. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I've said something that's offended him. I don't know, but I tried. But the door's always open. Anyway, so if you haven't, please consider joining the Big Words LLC Newsletter. I'm almost up to 20 names. Getting names for a newsletter is hard. It's not easy, but that's it right there. In addition to being a YouTube content creator, I'm a writer. You just put your name in the subscription box there. And I promise I won't give your information away to a third party. I'm visiting my dad right now. And at one point he was very anal about, don't give my email address out. Don't spam take me off those lists or whatever. So I plan to do this monthly. So I'm a YouTube content creator and a writer. I'm trying to finish this book this year, but the day job takes a lot out of you. This is my book project, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story. I'll be talking about this in the newsletter in addition to other things. And I have another promotional piece on the way involving Buffalo's Cliff Robinson. For you basketball fans out there who watched the NBA in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, you're probably familiar with Cliff Robinson. He went to Riverside High School. That's my mother's alma mater in Buffalo. He went to UConn. He helped put the UConn Huskies on the map. And then he got drafted by the Rip City Portland Trailblazers, Clyde the Glide Drexler, Terry Porter, Buck Williams, Kevin Duckworth, those guys. And he had a 20-year-long career in the NBA. And I think he scored 19,000 points, but Cliff was a journeyman. So that's my book project. I have another promotional piece coming out. So that's all there. So this stream, I called this stream, what did I call this stream? Scholarly thoughts on civics and politics. So sometimes thoughts are rolling around in your mind, and then something happens and they come and they coalesce into a writing or a stream. And that's what happened here. Something from my blogging platform. As you guys know, I'm a blogger, but I'm also in the business of search engine optimization, SEO. And so I have a customer who sends me content that I publish and they compensate me for my time, assuming the piece is published correctly. But they sent me something that's very short, and that I thought was worth reading. But before I get to that, I want to say that I think this stream is a bit of a prelude to tomorrow night's stream. Tomorrow night's stream, which I normally don't do on a Friday evening because that's the happy hour and the dinner hour. And who wants to work on a Friday evening? But one of the persons that I published this essay with, she said she could only do it on a Friday evening. So the name of this piece, and I put this in my community tab over the last few weeks. This piece is called Positive Solutions to Vexing Divisions in Society. So this is below in the description box. And me and the two authors, we're going to talk about this tomorrow. It touches upon some very, very sensitive topics, such as defunding the police. If you watched the State of the Union address that came up, it touches on white supremacy. That's a sensitive topic, and it touches upon critical race theory, which is something that I've been hearing about in my periphery for the last half a year, but it's not something I ever stopped and took a look at and said, what's critical race theory about? So those are two very volatile subjects. But my guests, I think they're concerned about where society is going. And I think that they're concerned about the citizens of the United States turning and cannibalizing one another. And they're concerned about who's putting these messages out. So this is going to be the first of many writing collaborations and also podcast collaborations where we're going to talk about just culture and society and the way things used to be and where things are going. So please tune in. Please tune in and watch us and let us know what you think at 6:30. That's going to be a fun time. And our challenge is going to be to present this stuff in a non-volatile, non-threatening way, because these topics are volatile and they tend to get people's emotions running really high. What's going on, Sheed? Sheed, I'm gonna ping you pretty soon so we can talk about what do you call it? Self knowledge of self. I'm gonna ping you really soon. I got a pile of things this high to do, but I'm gonna ping you soon so we can talk about that. So this discussion is arguably a prelude to tomorrow night's stream. One of the things that inspired this, I did a stream on Saturday for Black History Month on the late, great Reginald Lewis. And as they say, there is still meat on the bone. So as I'm finishing up the book, and I'm just in the chapter where Reginald, I think it's talking about how he passed away from brain cancer. But there were 2 to 3 chapters left when I did that stream, and there's more meat on the bone. Content is it's like a turkey, and you cut, and some topics are so robust, and there are so many, and some topics you can do so much with that you just cut meat off and cut more meat off and cut more meat off and cut more meat off. Well, Reginald, there are things that I'll be able to talk about in terms of Reginald for probably the next year and for years to come. But Reginald in his book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? It turns out that Reginald had at times a contentious relationship with the media, particularly the print media, because this was the 1980s and the early 1990s. So this was before the internet. But he had a contentious relationship with them, and he felt like that they weren't always giving the most accurate depiction of him, his accomplishments, and the business deals that he was doing. And in Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun, Reginald introduced a term that I might have heard before, but it just never sunk in. and that's the concept of the fourth estate. So I pulled this earlier, and so for those of you, some of you might be familiar with this, and some of you might not be. But again, I want to turn this channel into a bit of a think tank and a thought space. So we should always learn something here. We're not always going to come here and rant on what this content creator's doing and what that content creator's doing. And, we're not going to rant on all the celebrity gossip and stuff like that. I want to turn this into a thought space. So we should always learn something. We should be building and talking about the ideas here. So the fourth estate, what is that? So I pulled this picture from Google earlier, and historically, this is I think it just refers to how societies were governed, and how societies were run. So if you look over there, one pyramid says historic. So the first estate was the probably in Europe, the aristocracy. The second estate was the church. The third estate was the military. The fourth estate was the writers and the journalists. The fifth estate was the merchants. The sixth estate was the peasants. So this is going back to Europe, medieval times, and so on, et cetera, et cetera. So in modern times, I think this is trying to give a depiction of what our modern society and world is like. So the first estate is the legislature or Congress. The second estate is judiciary, so our courts. The third estate is the executive function, or maybe the president. I'm not sure if that's referring to executives of companies, but I think it's referring to the executive branch of the government. The fourth estate is the press. So they've maintained their position under this paradigm throughout history. And then the fifth estate is business, and the sixth estate is the consumers. So this is a hierarchy for society. And arguably, in our modern digital age, we have a fifth estate. So the modern fifth estate seems to be big tech. So our technological media apparatus, big tech, and we've seen them influence things over the last 10 years, arguably in the last several election cycles. And one could make the argument that the fifth estate now, big tech, is dictating or is helping to dictate the news that we get, our points of view on things, and they're very closely curating which information we get and which information we do and do not have access to. So Reginald Lewis, his book and my covering of his life helped inspire this stream. I've also taken an interest lately in economists. I've talked about Dr. Thomas Sowell, who I know some people are not a fan of. I've also talked about Dr. Walter E. Williams on this channel. I've talked about Dr. Claude Anderson. I don't know if he'd be considered an economist. But about a month ago, my mentor turned me on to a gentleman named Antony Davies. And Antony Davies is an economist, and I would encourage you to look up that name. I'm going to write it here in the chat. And the thing I like about economists is that you can make the argument that they're scientists as well. They're not biological scientists, but they understand money, they understand economics, they understand economic laws, and they understand history, they understand politics, they understand the power of the calculator. So Antony Davies, I would encourage you all, whoever watches this, to go check out that channel. He has a very good podcast with another gentleman called Words and Numbers, and they talk about things. They talk about taxes. They talk about the deficit. They talk about quantitative easing. They talk about politics and politicians, but not in terms of this party good, this party bad, this politician is good, this politician is bad, MAGA this, Build Back Better, this. They talk about things in terms of, is this economically viable? Is this going to work? Are they blowing smoke up our rear ends? This is, the government spending more money than it's taking in. This is unsustainable. And after listening to the master teacher's passing through, always a pleasure. Thank you for passing through, master teacher. You know what, master teacher? Ironically, or should I say coincidentally, I did pull the Monahan Report before this whole firestorm started, and I was going to sit down and read it and ask you to come and talk about it in a scholarly way. But what I'm seeing is that people, at least in this little alleyway here, I'm not sure people can talk about the Monahan Report in a scholarly way. So maybe we'll put that back on the shelf for now, or maybe I'll read it and marinate on it for a while and let this tempest die down, and then maybe I'll have you come over and talk about it. But right now, it's just way too hot. Anyway, the economists. So over on that channel, and I'm certain, BGS shares the dark money news, and BGS shares economics as well. And I think that the important thing about that is that when you listen to economists talk, they ask real world questions, and they, the politicians, they propose things and they say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They cater to this group over here, they cater to that group over there. And as I'm going to read for you, there's a reason why they do that. But on this particular channel, Antony Davies' channel, one of the things that I enjoy about him is that he's talking about things in a very impartial way, but also he describes the politicians as their own class. They're their own class, they're their own entity. And okay, black wealth power, a rule of thumb here, I'm not talking about who I voted for, especially not now. It's just maybe at some point when we get further away from this current period, I'll say I voted for this person or I voted for that person. But right now, everything is just way too hot. But what I will say is that on that channel, they talk about politicians like they describe them as a separate class and their own entity. We know that they are because they have to get voted into office, and it's a big to-do for them to get voted into office. They campaign, they fundraise, all those things, but they have their own agendas. They say things, they promise things, they cater to certain groups, they court certain groups, and they make promises, at times not keeping those promises. And when you're listening to them talk, and you're listening to them campaign, you have to ask, okay, what's the likelihood of them getting that done? They're promising this, they're promising that, but what's the likelihood of getting them done? And also, they're spending their time talking about this thing over here, but the really big issue is this thing over here. And nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about the deficit. No one's talking about our country's economy tanking, and no one's talking about how the spending is unsustainable and those kinds of things. So that appeals to me, and I have to admit that I have fallen prey and I have fallen victim to getting caught up in politicians' promises, and I've fallen victim to tribalism myself, and probably the last couple of election cycles, and I've fallen victim to choosing a side. Though I think that the last cycle, and I'm being very discreet here, I'm kind of stepping back into a place of neutrality because I saw people get unhinged. I saw even just here in the YouTube streets, in families, with friends, significant others, it just got really bad. So I'm finding myself just kind of stepping back into a place of neutrality. And now, after watching that channel, Antony Davies channel, and even, some people would call some of the stuff BGS shares fear porn. I'm more worried about the economy, and I'm more worried about where this entire Titanic is going in that regard, and the fact that it's scary to me that nobody's talking about where that's going. And I'll just say this and then I'll move along because I don't want to go on forever and ever. But according to that channel, the inflation that we're experiencing is due to the printing of money. So there's a lot of finger pointing. He did it. He did it. He did it. It's because of him. It's because of this. But we seem to have a borrowing epidemic on the government level. And when there's no more money to borrow, I've gleaned this. When there's no more money to borrow, you just print more. Well, that seems to be catching up to us right now. Anyway, once again, the super chat is live. If anyone wants to super chat anything, if you want to make a donation by Cash App or PayPal, that's here. I see a Laker fan in the house. What's going on? Raheem Gaines. I think he and his brother normally remind us every day how high the gas prices have gotten. When I drove here to upstate New York from the Washington, D.C. area, my last fill up, I think it was almost $4. So to fill up half the tank of my little Kia Forte, it cost about $26 to do that. So to fill the thing entirely up at that gas price, it would cost about $50 or so. Anyway, Antony Davies inspired this stream. Sam J. Jones inspired this stream. I don't know if you guys know who Sam J. Jones is. Flash Gordon. He played Flash Gordon, and he was being interviewed over on my media channel because I have multiple channels. He was being interviewed by a content creator who critiques movies over there called The Critical Drinker. And Sam J. Jones, I think he's more spiritual now, but he kept saying that when people ask him which party he belongs to, he says, I belong to the practical thinking, common sense party. So he kept reiterating that I belong to the practical thinking, common sense party. So he inspired this stream. The blog post I'm going to read inspired this stream, and also the State of the Union address inspired this stream as well. And some encouraging things were said during the State of the Union address. Of course, a lot of the things were said there. Again, I'm going back into more of a neutral space, and I've said this before, that since I show my face here, I have to be careful about what I say because, I think things can, if you have someone who's got a high position, things can affect other people around you. So I'm a little bit choosy about what I say here. So politically, I'm being a little more cautious, and I'm moving back into a neutral space for myself, for my own personal health, but for those around me as well. But I talked about Antony Davies. I jotted some notes down here on my notepad. And I scribbled down one of the things that he's pointed out on his channel, and I think, BGS is a bit of a Rhodes Scholar himself. One of the things he and his co-host, I can't think of his co-host's name on Words and Numbers. One of the things they point out is that the average American just doesn't have time to read and investigate everything. Or maybe another way to say it is that the average American doesn't make time to read and investigate everything. So we're left at the mercy. The reason this is significant is because we're left at the mercy of the fourth estate. So information, when you're left at the mercy of the fourth estate, Information is spoon fed to you. It's very carefully curated for your consumption. We might not tell you about this piece over here, but we're going to emphasize this piece to play upon what we want you to know and what we want you to think. And so I think in their content, if you guys go over and listen to their content, they talk about that all the time. The average American just doesn't have time or maybe even the interest to read up on all these things. They just hear them, they watch them on the news outlets, and they react. Speaking of which, I left 2 of their links down there. I keep plugging these guys. I just find their stuff interesting. One video is called Conventional Wisdom versus Data. And then this next video I'm going to tell you guys about is important because it gave me another way of looking at another radioactive topic, and that's immigration. And Antony Davies talks about, the name of the video is called The Economics of Immigration. And if you're watching, I mean, how could you not watch the last election cycle? But if you watch the last couple of election cycles, that was a hotbed issue. And it's used to divide people. It plays upon people's fears, especially if you're a real patriot and you want to see the country's borders protected. That issue was used to very much divide people. But the entirety of it, which BGS is there in the chat, BGS has done a good job of filling in the entire picture. The entire picture wasn't given to us. Yeah, you have people coming here who aren't necessarily coming legally, and there may be reasons for that, but also our country is not producing enough babies. The state's not producing enough babies, so we need more people to pay taxes. That's a separate issue altogether, that the country is not producing enough babies for the people who are born here, but also there are jobs that Americans don't want to do, and there are jobs that Americans don't want to do. In that video, he's talked about immigrants who have made significant economic contributions to our country. So that's just one of many issues that was used as a political tool and that wasn't explained in its entirety. So that video is below in the description box because it's very important, especially if you got caught on the anti-immigration side. Let's see. When you don't understand things in their entirety, you fall prey to the very carefully curated narratives that are fed to us. And also, again, they talk about deficit spending, this whole thing that our elected officials are doing, this whole thing not being sustainable, and that there may be a ultimate reckoning event coming. I think BGS has talked about that before. He talked about that ad nauseum in some of the content he shared. So they inspired this. Sam J. Jones inspired this. And so, again, guys, there's a bot there. Please strike it out. So I got this blog post from one of my customers, and I thought it was interesting to read because it talks about, as I'll describe, Antony Davies and even some of the other Antony Davies and the B1 Brigade channels. You guys know who I'm talking about. There's a term that they call themselves, and I can't think of it. But they describe the politicians as their own class. Normally, we think of class in terms of rich and poor, rich, middle class, the poor, but they're their own class, just like the media. Before I read this post, and I'm going to stop rambling, guys, one of the other things, that channel that I described, there are 2 links below in the description box. They get to, and we saw this on Tuesday's speech. One of the things we hear oftentimes the political class talk about is these people over here need to pay their fair share. They're not paying their fair share, but does the average American know how much these people over here are paying? Um, is it fair? Is it enough? Are they paying anything? I think the picture that's painted is that they aren't paying anything, but that's not entirely true. But you guys go to the channel if you want to hear more. I'm not an expert on it, but it's just fascinating that it would be presented to us this way over and over and over again, oftentimes to spark anger, but it isn't necessarily the way that it's portrayed. This blog post, let me read this really quickly. This is a short piece because you have to think about also what when the political class is looking out at us, the sheep, what are they thinking? How do they see us? It's very, very fascinating. And I think this piece, I think it captures what they're thinking when they're looking out at us. So again, this is not telling you to vote a certain way, who to like, who to not like. This is more of a thought piece. I just want to get people to think. And this is why I've become more of a, as BG has said there in the chat, a political agnostic. I want to take my feelings out of it. So this is entitled 4 Tips for Improving Your Political Campaign. And when they sent this to me, I thought this was very interesting. I was like, okay, 4 tips for improving your political campaign. They send me a lot of business content. They send me some writing content. They send me all kinds of things. But this is very short, guys, so bear with me. It says 2 focuses on my blog are current events and political discussions. If you're thinking about getting into politics and you want to run an effective campaign, there are several factors you want to account for. The following contributed post is entitled 4 Tips for Improving Your Political Campaign. Okay. This might sound like fluff to some of you, but I think there's a couple of insightful things here. I want to thank Black Wealth and Power. I want to thank Black Wealth and Power for this $5 super chat. He says, "Do you think that our people are emotionally mature enough for politics?" I think BG has answered that already. I think certainly for our tribe, our race in this country, we are race matters. Shout out to Cornel West is a trigger point. There's always emotion that's related to race, and I think that's always going to be a trigger point for a lot of us. Maybe you'll see that die down as the generations go on, and there are fewer from the civil rights era amongst us. But it depends on a lot of it depends on what you're exposed to, how you're socialized, and how you grow up. That dictates how you see it. But as long as race is front and center, I think that's always going to be a trigger point for us, for a lot of our people. So it says, whether you're running for House elections, local elections, or another type of election, your campaign strategy can make the difference between winning and losing. The size of the electorate, the geography, the public's mindset, the timing of the election, the methods of voter communication used should all be considered when developing your campaign strategy. So these are all things that, when people are running for election, these are all things that they're thinking about when they're looking out at us, the sheep. And I'm saying sheep jokingly. But arguably, the argument could be made that some of us are sheep. A specific election strategy influenced by the political climate in which it is conducted is required for every election campaign, in short. And in a local election, gaining supporters is primarily a matter of winning over the voters in one's community. This post looks at some ways you can improve your campaign strategy. So this post is kind of talking about local elections, but some of these things you can extrapolate out to national elections. So just keep that in mind. Just don't get your mind fixed on local elections, because there are things here that apply to the national level as well. Competitor analysis. So I don't know if people look at it this way, but when there's an election, there's a competition. They're competing. They're trying to get a higher score than the other people running. Each person's trying to get the top score in terms of votes. The evaluation of competitors is critical in any competition. A thorough understanding of your opponent's strengths and weaknesses can provide you with a significant advantage in developing your campaign messaging. Participating in head-to-head debates and undermining their campaign message when it becomes necessary. When it becomes necessary. Make a spreadsheet with the strengths and weaknesses of all candidates, including yourself. Each candidate's position on the critical issues in the election should be listed on a single spreadsheet, so you can identify your strengths and weaknesses and where you are vulnerable concerning your competitors, and you can communicate more clearly with your customers. So that's an interesting point right there. Are voters just people in the population, or are they quote unquote customers? Should your vote be quid pro quo? Should you get something for it? Should your vote be up for sale, quote unquote? Or should your vote just be something that you do because it's the right thing to do, because that candidate says the right thing? A lot of people can't agree on that. Asking for tangibles, asking for something in return for your vote. A lot of folks don't agree on that. Phone calls. Talking to your local community and the wider population will be essential to your victory. You need to be able to speak to and reach as many people as possible to persuade them to give you their vote. Working with Kaplan strategies can streamline your phone calls and help you provide efficient outreach to your phone call plan. A quick aside in terms of SEO, in terms of search engine optimization, companies pay to get their link put into content. So that's why Kaplan strategies was strategically put there. But I think this is an important message. Improve your campaign message. The goal of a campaign is to establish the candidate's personal identity. This includes the candidate's educational and professional background and what makes them a good fit for the position for which they are running. So how many times have we heard candidates question other candidates' qualifications? How many times have we heard people in the audience question a candidate's qualifications? He was a community organizer. He's not a career politician. He has no government experience, so on, et cetera, et cetera. Also, the likability factor. How much in the United States do we factor in how much we like a candidate versus what they're actually proposing in terms of policies? Likability, I would argue that likability in the United States is more important than the actual policies. Though I have come to the realization, well, I'll get to that later. Your campaign will only be successful if it is tailored to the specific needs of its target audience. It informs voters about the critical issues and policies of the candidate. It is necessary to consider the viewpoint of the voters in this situation. Demonstrate that your victory will improve their quality of life to gain their attention and vote. This goes back to making promises. And I think that it's important for us out in the crowd to kind of think about, okay, can they fulfill and deliver on whatever they're promising, and what are the consequences of them fulfilling and coming through on what they're promising. So in many instances, their goal is to get elected and then, you know, let the chips fall where they may. And as we've learned, and I'll get to this in the last part of this, it seems, or one theory is that said elected official is beholden to the person who actually funded their campaign, regardless of the promises they've made. It's the person who funded their campaign that they ultimately have to take care of once they get into their office. Creating multiple fundraising channels. One of the most challenging tasks when running for a local office, and I'll make the argument for national office, is raising funds. How are you planning on expanding the necessary funds to make yourself a viable candidate in the election? So I think a lot of people don't understand the role that money plays in all of this. Your campaign costs could range from a few $1,000s to several $100,000, depending on where you are running and the demographics of the area in which you are running. That's why it's so critical to provide as many opportunities as possible for people to contribute to your campaign as possible. From selling merchandise to asking family and friends to setting up social media fundraisers and more, please find out how your demographic prefers to donate and make sure you have the suitable options available for them to do so. That's for my blogging platform. I thought that would make for a nice discussion piece, because I think that, again, this is focused more for local elections, but I think that certain parts of it definitely extrapolate outwards to the national elections, especially the last part regarding the fundraising, because we know, back in, I think during the Gore, George W. Bush election, that's when McCain-Feingold, John McCain and Russ Feingold from Wisconsin, they were trying to push out their legislation to limit, what were they trying to do? I think they were trying to stop dirty money from getting into, was it dirty money? They were trying to level the playing field in terms of donations. I'll just say that. I don't think they were successful in getting that through, but certainly money plays a significant role in the political process, and in particular in the campaign process. And I don't think a lot of people quite understand that, and they don't understand why, when elected officials get into their seat, they don't understand why they do certain things and why they cater to certain people. Well, those people they're catering to help them get there in many instances. So let's see, we're at 49 minutes. I didn't intend for this to be a one of the marathon streams. I'm going to read some of your comments here. BGS, you still out there? If you say yes, I'll drop the link, and you can come say a few words if you feel like it. Let's see. We're here. Thank you for being here, Mr. Heath. Black Wolf Power said, hey. We here. C.R. Frank says, salute to our Black scholars. Thank you, though I am stepping out of my area of expertise with this stream. But I think I'm a bit of a, well, my specialty is the sciences. I have an interest in other things, which is what I use this channel for. Policy is king. She'd shouted out BGS. Dr. Dunbar, did you vote for Biden? I'm not going there. BGS says economist talk structure rather than policy. That's good to know. Writing games passed through. Black Wealth of Power says, I don't think our people are emotionally mature enough for politics as a collective, Dr. Dunbar. BGS says, no people are mature enough for what's coming. BGS says, politically agnostic. Yeah, I think that's where, in my personal journey, I think that's kind of where I'm landing. After seeing what's happened over the last decade, but particularly the last election cycle, yeah, I think I want to, going forward, I want to take my emotions out of things. BGS, if you want to come up and say a few words about what I've talked about, there it is. I'm not going to stay on for hours and hours, but if you want to add on to something I've said, because I know you share a lot of the economic news from that British guy. I can't think of his name, but it's sobering information. But I think it's information that people need to think about. A lot of us right now, especially with the fifth estate and all this technology, we're all kind of caught in our own silos, and we're just caught in our own worlds, just thinking about, just arguing and thinking about stuff. Some of the stuff's important, but no one's really looking at where things are going. I already read the super chat. Black Wealth and Power said, that's fair. BGS Moore said, part of the ruling class. Black Wealth and Power says, Master Teacher, can I pay you to do a review/reaction show to an old 1970s Louis Farrakhan special report? That sounds interesting. He says, perhaps. How much for the request? How would I send the money through Cash App or Super Chat? Send the video first. BGS is not committing to that. Doesn't matter how large the ransom is. 1971 special report, Farrakhan. Let's see. I'm still here, and he is here. So let's see what BGS has to say about any of this. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Dr. Dunbar, what's going on? Or I should say, Dr. Goodbar. I like the hat.
That's good, bar. So I used that in the counselor's corner on Monday.
Oh, did you?
I went up and said it. You know, it wasn't one of the more raucous shows, but but what they were talking about resonated with me, and I used the nickname you all gave me.
At first, I don't think you were kind of sure about it, but I think it started to grow on you.
Gotta wait through it.
So I saw the change from the, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So I saw the change from Dr. Dunbar to Dr. Goodbar.
Dr. Goodbar. All right. So, well, like I said, I don't know if you missed my you were listening. I said I actually pulled the Monahan Report. It's on my to-do list to read it.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to take a pause on that for discussing it for now.
Sometimes you got to strike while it's hot, because it's hard to get people interested in policy, which is what I like about this whole Monahan Report debate, because that's just the beginning of how policy they're trying to inject policy or national policy into a problem, and what actually succeeded and what failed. Because got to remember, this is almost 60 years ago, and we're still talking about it, because I just did a video from a New York Times article in 1983 looking back, almost 20 years on the Monahan Report, and a lot of things that he said, the problems that he saw actually came to fruition, not only in the black community but also the white community. So a lot of those things actually got pointed out. Hopefully, I did a video. Hopefully, Dr. Johnson will actually do a video on it too.
Okay, it's interesting that Eleanor Holmes Norton was there at that table with them.
Yeah.
So it's not like she didn't know that all these things were brewing.
Mm-hmm.
um, and things
Brewing. They weren't brewing. They had already
they
boiled
already
over.
taken root.
Yeah, they
Okay,
already taken root. So
okay.
this is 20 years later. And the funny thing is that what Arthur Vidmore actually found out by actually going back and looking at some of this is that black women did not get the full interest into AFDC or welfare until 1961, 62.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the Monahan scissors started to form. So almost instantly, as soon as they got included, through civil rights into the same kind of rights that white women had, instantly you can see the separation between black men and black women. So it wasn't something that had to form over like a decade or so. It was like within a year or two, all of a sudden, the out of wedlock birth rate started growing, and divorces started happening, and all that, single parenthood, all that kind of stuff started forming almost instantly. That's what
Mm-hmm.
Monahan was concerned about because even he said before they did that, the welfare rolls and the jobless rate or the unemployment rate of black men was in sync right up until they did that. Then all of a sudden everything went haywire. He didn't understand it. That's when he actually put the Monahan scissors in it and started looking at the black family. There's something that I don't understand. So really what the Monahan report was about something he didn't understand. So he said, let me go to the people that do. And then we need to, look at it because the policies that we're actually trying on everybody else is not working for black people. So we need to figure out what kind of policies we need to actually adjust to or actually apply to black people. And it kind of got ignored for a couple years, and then there was a big series of riots in 1967. And then that's when Johnson said, okay, well, let's go back and actually study this. I said Monahan called for this in 65. Now let's actually take a whole commission and actually study it. And what Monahan has suggested was actually there. So what Monahan suggested, even though he didn't have a whole bunch of proof because he didn't do a study, the Kerner Commission found the exact same things. And then 20 years later, they're talking about the same thing that Monahan was talking about. So whatever he said, it was actually whatever he noticed, the hunch that he had actually came to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh, BGS, you might, you're getting lobbied.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
getting lobbied to make this video. He says, at BGS Immore, thank you, Black Wealth and Power, for the $5 super chat. He says, at BGS Immore, were you able to see the link in the chat to the Farrakhan video?
If you don't have a wrench, I probably can't see it. So,
Black Wealth, let
uh,
me give you a wrench. You're
yeah,
yeah,
you could
I'll give
email
you
me.
that. Yeah.
I don't want to promise to do a video of something I haven't seen because I might disagree with it. I don't like taking people's money for something that I haven't seen. I want to see it first, and then if I can do something with it, I'll do something with it. If I can't, I can't. That's why I see people ask me to do that all the time. I said, let me see the video first.
Okay. I just modded you, Black Wealth and Power, so you can share
Yeah.
the link there if you want. Okay. Let's see. There's another question I want to ask you about that. Why the why the pushback on that? That'll be the last question I ask you about that.
Okay. The pushback on the Monahan report is because black women do not want to. One, they don't want to. They still don't. They still want. They don't want to take responsibility for the black family. Okay, they don't want to admit that there's a matriarchy. Okay, in the black family, they want to because if it was a matriarchy, then the function of the black family, the black society is on them. They don't want that. They'd rather blame the men. Okay, even though the men don't have control of it. So Monahan wasn't the first to actually say it. Clark said it. Frazier said it. Who else said it? Du Bois said it. Murdaugh said it. A host of other people said there was a black matriarchy. I can't remember the Jewish guy's name. He actually had a book called The Black Matriarchy. In the United States. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember his name. That was in the 40s. So well before Monahan even said anything, there had been a whole series of black scholars, black and white scholars, talking about the black matriarchy in the United States, and the black women took exception to that. That's like when they start talking about blaming the victim. blaming what he's saying. He's blaming black women for the plight of the black community instead of the structural racism. But Monahan, that's why I come when we actually did a video on it, we actually pointed out from his from the very preamble, the first section, that he blamed the problems of the black family on the mistreatment of the black people, for 300 years. That's what he blamed it on. He actually made that very clear. But the thing is, it doesn't mean that the black matriarchy doesn't exist. Even he pointed out, 75% of your valedictorians in high school, in black high schools, were female. Black females were more educated and more employed than black males. That was just a fact, even back then. So what he was saying was already true, had already been pointed out by a number of other people. He didn't make that up. He just pulled it from black sociologists.
Okay.
That's what they took exception to. They still take exception to it because they still say the black, it's a black patriarchy and black women are oppressed by black men. That's what the whole color purple thing is about. That's the black patriarchy actually oppressing black women.
Okay. There was one male. I won't say his name. Do you think sometimes people just want to argue just to argue? Because I know that there was a lot of back and forth over what the report was actually saying. So it almost got to semantics. Is it just arguing just to argue, or is it?
It was arguing just to argue, and the argument was over one little point because it's about Monahan scissors, right? Monahan scissors, and about whether black men were actually abandoned the family or kicked out. Okay. And that was the point they were trying to make because even before the black manosphere, right? You've heard of black women saying they kicked the man out of the house. The man he wasn't working, and you're from Buffalo, you're from a working class town, right? And you know that if a man didn't earn enough or he wasn't up to par, or whatever it is, the black woman would put him out. I mean, that's just the black women would actually brag about that. So it's nothing new. If the guy lost his job, he didn't find a job within 6 months, she gonna put him out. Okay, she gonna kick him out of the house. So that's been in the black family. That's been talked about since Du Bois actually wrote the book Philadelphia Negro. He actually commented how black women could actually find jobs in Philadelphia, doing domestic work or other kinds of work where a black man probably couldn't, and if he couldn't find a job, then she would put him out. She put her husband out. That's been that way in the black community. So that's what the debate was about because what black men have been saying for God since I was a kid is that a lot of black women chose the check over the husband or the father of the child, and that's not even in dispute. That's been proven. But that was a debate that the black manosphere is saying that we're using the Monahan Report to say that black women kick black men out of the house, and that's what they stuck on that little bitty thing because we talked about Monahan scissors.
Okay. And
we actually explained it and said, okay, under the welfare laws. In fact, I got to do a video on under welfare laws. Okay, AFDC was originally meant. Welfare is originally meant for widows and orphans. You had to have a deceased husband to get any kind of state-sponsored welfare. Okay.
What does AFDC stand for?
What is it? What is it? Assistance for, I think it's called Assistance for Dependent Children or something like that. I'm trying to remember what it was. But AFDC, I think it's Assistance for Dependent Children. What's it? Aid to Families for Dependent Children. Yeah, with dependent children. Yeah, that's AFDC, and that was actually done under the Social Security law under Roosevelt in '35, and he actually modified it for husbands that were actually out of work or had left the family, right? Because they need to find work under the Depression. So he actually modified. So you didn't have to have a death certificate for your husband. You can say, hey, okay, he just left the house because he couldn't find work or whatever. So they marked it off as he abandoned the family. So that allowed the white women to get welfare. And it didn't happen for black women until 1961. In fact, they said it because black women were already working, had already been working in the labor force. And so white women were expected to stay home with the children. So that's how come they allowed white women to get it. But they modified it for black women. And so if you wanted welfare, there's only two boxes: either you're married and your husband was dead, or you're married and your husband abandoned you. Those are the only two check boxes. So if you're reading the stat, it's got to going to be dead or abandoned. And that's what Monahan read. Okay, they say 3/4 of the women on welfare had whose husbands abandoned them.
Okay.
So that's where that came from.
All right. For those watching on the playback, there is a thing called the Monahan Report. It's a part of our long, complex history, and it's a hot debate topic right now. So
I don't know why now, because I actually did the videos on the Monahan Report back in 2016 or 15, something. I think 16. So 6 years ago, I actually did a 9-part series on the Monahan Report.
Okay.
So I don't know why all of a sudden in the manosphere it's a hot topic. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question, then I'm going to wrap up. You stated here, going back to what I was some of the things I was talking about. You said economists talk structure rather than policy. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Economists talk policy when or use policy to actually explain the structure of economics. In other words, what is the actual structure of unemployment? Okay, how many people are unemployed? They actually read stats. How many people are unemployed versus the population? How many immigrants are brought in to actually do a certain job? They don't talk policy. Okay, policy basically the structure actually lends to what the policy will be. Okay, if you say demographics, you're not having enough kids. Economists would actually look at it and say, there's not enough kids being born. How do we solve that particular problems? Because it'll cause, you're going to have too many older people. You're going to have to pay more into taxes. You don't have enough young people actually support, because to support every old retired person, it takes 2 people working. What if you don't have enough babies at the bottom? Where do they come from? You have to import them from somewhere. You have to import workers from somewhere. So in other words, the policy is to import workers. Okay, why are they importing workers? That's what economists deal with, the why and not the what.
Okay.
Right. In other words, the structure says, okay, we don't have enough people doing certain types of jobs. Where do you get them from? Okay, and so you have to allow immigrants in. So you allow immigrants in, and the thing of the mechanism of allowing immigrants in is policy. Okay, how are we going to actually let them in? And how are we going to talk to the American people where we can actually bring them in? Okay, that's under policy, allowing them in. But the thing is, the structural thing is what economists talk about. How do you make what payments? How do you pay for Social Security? How does automation get put? How does automation get worked into the economy? Okay, and then what is the automation being brought in going to do for people as far as jobs are concerned, or what kind of jobs do you need, or what kind of education do you need? Because automation is going to take jobs from the bottom, or whatever it is. That's structure. That's the structure. And then the politicians have to try to find a policy to actually solve the problem of that structural, thing. Whether it's automation, whether it's immigration, whether it's people out of work because of lack of jobs or whatever. Okay, the policy is actually to solve the structural problem. But the economists are actually there to describe what the structural problem actually is. At least the ones I listen to.
Yeah. Okay. Master teacher, I mean, I don't know if there's a way for him to reach out to you via social media or whatever, but he asked
Who's
the
that?
question again.
Who's that?
Black Wealth and Power again.
Oh, okay. I just put in my email. That's probably the best way to find me. I have to look at it. I mean, I haven't had a chance to look at it. So, I think Hezekiah. I watched Hezekiah, but I haven't watched that one. I have to look at it first, and then if there's something there that I can work with, then I don't mind doing it.
Okay. I'm going to read this one, Miss Burdine, because I'm not doing an extensive talk on the Monahan Report right now. She says, I think many Black females were not aware that Black men had been targeted to be casted out of their Black families. They were subjects of abuse more than any other human species in history.
They actually weren't targeted. Okay, really, if you think about it, they weren't targeted to be cast out of the families. If that was the case, they'd have been cast out of the families after Reconstruction. That's a Monahan. Really, what happened is that um, do Black women have the same rights and privileges as white women do? And if the answer is yes, then they are allowed to obtain the same kind of welfare and help that Black women get, the thing that white women get. But the thing is, what do Black women do with the exact same thing that white women get? White women have been getting that kind of welfare since 1935, but it didn't affect them leaving their husbands or having babies out of wedlock or whatever that is. It didn't affect them the same way. Or the Latinas or whoever the other people actually get that kind of stuff, right? When Black women got it, they did something different, and that's where the problem came in. Because structurally, our culture, in fact, I have a female mentor. Okay, said exactly the same thing. He said black men and women in America are actually in reverse order of nature. So in other words, our structurally our culture is topsy turvy. Okay, because in 1750 to produce more slaves. Or actually have slaves born instead of imported, they made the rule in other words, the status of the womb determined the status of the child. So black slave women, because they were slaves, any children coming out of their womb were slaves. Okay, so they actually induced an actual matriarchy into Black culture. That's where it came. That's where it started, and basically it's been carried out for the last 300 years. So you have basically a culture formed by white people upside down like that. But the white people did not want white people did not want that kind of matriarchy in their society. They just made it for a slave class, and they actually doubled down on it in Jim Crow. In fact, there's a very good book by Diane Stewart. She actually goes through the whole thing. After upon emancipation, the North actually tried to force Black men and women into a patriarchal structure, but the thing is, it never took. Black women didn't want a patriarchal structure. They didn't. They still don't. So as soon as they got a chance to actually be independent from their men, they took it. So it's pretty clear. So white people did not set out to break up the Black family because it cost them more money and more problems. And that's what Monahan was trying to figure out. Okay, what can we do to keep these families together? And he thought, okay, if we give the men the jobs and have the men lead their families, then we can keep that Black family together instead of it splitting up and costing us more money. But that never took. In fact, what they found out is when white women actually entered the labor force, because that's what the New York Times article actually said. White women went from being 11% in the workforce to 48%, and all of a sudden, all those things that happened in the Black family start showing up in the white family too, where white women actually had more babies out of wedlock. They actually divorced their husbands more. There was more single mothers amongst white women because of that. So it's a structural problem. It has nothing to do with them wanting to split families up. In fact, most of the they spend a whole lot of money for that not to happen. But the thing is, when it's a structural problem like that, there's nothing you can do about it. So I think they've pretty much given up. In fact, two-thirds of welfare from the 30s up to the 90s is gone because Bill Clinton actually struck down two-thirds of the welfare process. That's where the work from welfare to work actually came from. It actually started in the Reagan administration, but the thing is, Bill Clinton actually put it in the law. So, but the thing is, a woman with a child still gets advantages that men don't have, especially a Black woman with children, with a single mother. You get way more advantages than a Black man, a black boy or a Black man in the same position. So it is what it is. It's a structural problem.
Okay. Well, on that note, Ms. Burdine, BGS has an extensive catalog on this topic. Perhaps we'll revisit.
Yeah, I just did a video. I just did a video talking about that that 1983 New York Times article. Actually pointed it out. So if you go to BGS Ibmore, my very last video, they actually review the Monahan Report and talk about all the structural problems and how they played out. And that was in 1983. So 40 years later, all they did was get worse. All it did was get worse. So the thing is, what he pointed out, what they said, it's not only in the black community, it's also in the white and Latina community, because it happened to the Latin community, the the Hispanic community. They went from, I think it was like 15% out of wedlock birth rate. I think they're in the 60s now. So it's a structural problem. So it's not them trying to break up the black family per se. It's just structurally it hit the black family first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I have to go eat something and make a phone call and go see what my dad is doing. So.
Okay. You in Buffalo?
No, I'm over in Albany. I
Okay.
don't know if you're familiar with New York State, but the Albany area is our state capital.
Yeah.
And I was actually born here, and then
okay.
When my mother and my father had differences of opinion, she moved out to Buffalo, and that's why.
Oh, yeah, shuffling off the Buffalo, huh?
Shuffling off the Buffalo. My dad stayed here.
Okay.
So I always had a reason to come out here, and I did my my postdoctoral scientific training here for 2.5 years.
Okay.
So he and I got to live together for 2.5 years, which was pretty interesting.
Okay. All right. You really got to know your dad as an adult, huh?
Yes.
It's a difference. It's a difference knowing your dad as an adult than it is as your dad as a child.
Yeah, man. As a child, it was all fun and games. Go to the video arcade. Go to Toys R Us. As an adult, it's different.
Yeah, you're a man. Okay, man to man. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for hanging out. I know this wasn't the usual fare.
Yeah.
In these circles, but branching out a little bit. So thank you.
That's part of my expertise. So basically you're my side of the coin. I don't have to sit there and actually at your feet and listen to you because you're about your expertise. This is kind of branching over to mine.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for
all right.
What up?
All right, Doc. Peace.
All right, everyone. I'm gonna wind this down. Just as a reminder, tomorrow I'm hosting Dr. Ralph G. Perino and Dr. Joan Cephas. They wrote this as a letter to the editor, and I published it on my blogging platform. It's called Positive Solutions to Vexing Divisions in Society. That's in the description box below. We're going to do this at 6:30. It'll probably be about an hour, depending upon how many folks we have show up in the chat and interact with us. I normally don't do streams on a Friday evening because that's happy hour and that's the dinner hour. And after a long week of working, whether it's in the office or teleworking, I want to go out and enjoy myself and enjoy some libations and spirits. But one of my guests can only do it at that time. So we're going to do it at that time. So if you're not doing anything, please stop through. There are some pretty the three words that they addressed in this essay are some pretty arguably radioactive topics right now in society, in political circles, in social media, defunding the police, critical race theory, and white supremacy. Those are words. So the theme is what words are being constantly thrown around that are dividing everyone. So, but I think we're going to talk about this in a scholarly, confrontational way, and the whole theme will be, how do we bring people back together? How do we try to heal some of these divisions? So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. If you want to read that essay, that is below. One more time, Isada, she's there in the chat. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. That's in the description box below. And I think that's it. I think that's a good place to end this. The subscribe button is there. You just enter your email address, and I promise I won't spam you. I intend to send that newsletter out once a month, and I won't give the information. I won't give your information away to anyone else. So, and I won't sell it either. So, Dr. Dunbar is a man of principles. So, all right, everyone. Well, enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. And for those of you who come by tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. You can also watch on the playback. And for those of you watching this on the playback, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to make a donation to the channel, that information is below in the description box in way of Cash App and PayPal. So with that, I'm going to close this down. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.